Hello, colleagues. This is Nikisha Leatherwood and my presentation on group level change. Burke states the more involvement opportunities that work groups are provided within the organization to help others plan and implement change, the more likely they are to embrace organizational change, those efforts, instead of resisting them. In my presentation, I want to present on some leadership models that are being used to address organizational change and how to deal with them in multiple types of organization. Research by Hegelman states that there are 5 key principles that we deal with when we're dealing with organizational change at the group level, and that these 5 requirements are needed for successful organizational change. Principle 1 is to understand that change takes place more effectively when worked at 3 levels, and that is the organization, the team, which is our focus, and also the individual level. Principle 2 states that change is adopted by connecting the individual beliefs that one person has to organizational results. The third principle states that change requires a plan and discipline implementation cascade. 4 states that change is accelerated by equipping leaders to lead others through the transition. And 5 states that change implementation calls for ongoing communication and collaboration, which brings us to the model that you are looking at. At the team level, the team must translate strategic goals into team responsibilities. By doing so, we build high-performing teams and address the impact of the changes to work in the team. In the model shown here, when we look at the 5 C's of transitional leadership, it is important to understand that leaders must commit by owning the change and preparing to lead. The leaders themselves must be committed to the change. Secondly, leaders must construct a plan to address the business impact and the risks that are associated with the change. So they must look at their responsibilities and any risks or potential risks that will affect the organization. Thirdly, leaders must create or jumpstart a high-performing team. We're going to learn and see later on how other researchers in the field of organizational change also have strategies that talk about how leaders must create high-performing teams to deliver the results necessary. Leaders are also responsible for coaching and developing individual team members through the transition. Leaders must be able to manage the different reactions to change. As a principal, it is something that I do on a daily basis. Please excuse me as I've been battling chronic laryngitis. That we must coach and develop those team members through the transition, understanding that everyone reacts differently to change. And in the center of those 4 C's, leaders must always collaborate their efforts and calibrate them to ensure that the implementation is going as expected. So in the calibration phase, it is necessary for leaders to clearly communicate the vision and to create common understanding, to proactively address misconceptions, and to sustain the efforts of the planning as it is taking place. As we look at another model of how in group level change, we must understand how recipients sometimes respond to organizational change. Research by Orrick, Bartunek, Lee, and Du show in this circumplex here how recipients and organizations respond to change. As you can see here in our model, in this circle of 360 degrees, it shows that where there you see on the right side pleasure, it shows how employees respond when they are happy with the change. Displeasure is displayed to the left over here. We also see up at the top high activation and at the bottom low activation or deactivation. To do my best to explain this model to you, in an organization, employees always respond differently to change. Typically here between 0 and 90 degrees, this is more known as change proactivity. This is where employees are truly excited and elated and enthusiastic about the change that is taking place. Also, on the right side of the circumflex, sometimes employees accept the change, but they don't do so in an excited or energetic manner. They may be calm, relaxed, or just content with the change. So they're not necessarily high activated, but more low activated. Then you have those employees who do not accept or want to go with the change in an organization. The left side of the model demonstrates some of the reactions that employees might display. High activated employees might be frenzied, jittery. Change resistance might be seen through stressful interactions. They may be angry or upset. Low activation responses might be feelings of despair, sadness, unhappiness, walking around looking gloomy, as if they have a woe is me attitude. And so what the circumflex does is it shows how leaders in an organization can better gauge and understand how their employees or those in the group might respond to some of the changes that are taking place. In further research by Bartunek, there was an article that addressed how organizational leaders use text and books that they have read and those experiences to influence organizational change. One model that I found to be very interesting was called the SCARF model by David Rock, and this was introduced in a book called Your Brain at Work. In the SCARF model, the letters in SCARF stand for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And the author stated that the more these factors are present in a change process, the more likely that people are to collaborate and cooperate. And ultimately, all leaders would like for their employees to collaborate and cooperate. The book states that there is a system of experiences and that the absence or the presence of these experiences will determine the extent to which people and our groups are engaged in the change process. It's important that when we look here at status is about an employee's relative importance to others. Status deals and it increases when people in groups feel like they are included in dealing with the issues that are usually reserved more for organizational leaders. Certainty involves knowing where groups fit in the actual organization and where the organization is headed. When groups feel left out in the change process, they often move towards the state of threat because they don't know what's going on. However, when people find out and you give them even a snippet of what's going on, they move toward responding and helping the organization to move. Autonomy deals with the ability of the groups to influence their situation. It increases when one knows or the groups know that their voice counts, and it decreases when the group does not belong or fit within the organization. Relatedness is a feeling of safety within the organization. As the groups work interconnectedly together and work towards moving the organization forward, this increases. And fairness is just a perception that we all deal with in organization. When groups work together, they ask themselves, is the process fair? Are they being treated fair? At the school level, I think of teachers and how they work together as grade levels. They want to know, am I getting the same thing that the other grades are getting? Are we getting our fair share? Are we able to work together? Is our planning time the same? Do we have a say? Is our voice going to be heard? So the SCARF model was one way that these authors showed how you could, employees again, at the group level and individual level, experience change in an organization. And what would our work be without the work of Kotter? In Kotter's 8-step model of understanding how change happens, he starts with that sense of urgency, building the guiding team or the guiding coalition, developing the vision. Even at the group level, it is important that the vision is intact. A recent activity that we've done here at our school is changed our vision statement, but each group had to come up with a vision statement that the whole organization will vote upon. Communicating for buy-in, empowering action, creating those short-term wins, not letting up, and making the change to stick. So as you have heard from a variety of students on change within organizations at the group level, I hope the models presented here has added to some of the things that you have learned. Resources are provided on the next page for you to refer to. Thank you so much for your time. Have a blessed and a happy rest of the semester. Thank you. And please pray for me and my chronic laryngitis that I'll be able to continue to lead as the Lord has called for me to do. Be blessed.